Casa de los representantes de Zanzíbar, Tanzania. Cuente usted con los 10 minutos para la presentación.
Good afternoon, my brothers and sisters. I'm very honored to have been invited to offer my intervention. I wanted to mention my sister that spoke from Venezuela. In 2002, we were part of a large indigenous delegation of the world at the World Summit on Sustainable Development. But what we call that UN meeting was a world unsustainable development because it involved capitalism. But at that meeting, I want to quickly say, as indigenous peoples, we filled up rows from all over, South America, Central America, from the Caribbean, from Mexico, United States, and Sami from Northern Europe, Southeast Asia, Indonesia, the Pacific, Africa. And the big issue from us was a recognition on the rights of indigenous peoples. It was President Chavez that was brave enough in his intervention as he pushed the button and the red light went on. He included the recognition of the rights of indigenous peoples. When he did that, all the indigenous peoples in that big auditorium stood up and we clapped our hands. And we went over there to shake his hands. And when I shook his hand, he was looking at me because we have crossed paths before. And he was crying. And he said with my translator, his mother was indigenous. His mother was indigenous. So with that, I wanted to share my brief words that I'm here part of a delegation of alliances called It Takes Roots. Yes, we come from the belly of the beast of the United States, the belly of the beast of consumption that is always hungry in eating the souls of humanity and the nature of Mother Earth. I'm the spokesperson of the Indigenous Environmental Network. We're based in the state of Minnesota in the United States near the Canadian border. We are an alliance of grassroots indigenous peoples of the land, youth and elders and women's societies. We came together 30 years ago to halt the issues of environmental and economic racism that was killing and still killing our peoples, and to fight for our rights of indigenous people. I give you greetings. I give you greetings, my brother right here that presented in the morning. I give you greetings from our leaders of many indigenous tribes, elders, and our spiritual authorities. Here at this encounter of the Cuban people, we have indigenous representatives that we brought from the top of the world, from Alaska to Canada and the lower 48th parallel of the United States, including 3 indigenous youth. They are our earth protectors. They are our warriors in defense of the future generation. They are here. Some of them are wearing the cedar basket hat. So I come here from a stronghold of the resistance of the original indigenous peoples of Abya Yala of the north, of North America, what some of our people call the Great Turtle Island. I am both of the indigenous tribes of the Dene, the Navajo of the south, and our Dakota Sioux people. I was there at the indigenous encampment in Standing Rock, North Dakota in 2016. In defense of our 7 council fires of the Great Sioux Nation, the Lakota, Nakota, and the Dakota peoples. You may have seen the reality of the imperialist United States threatening the peace and security of our sovereign Standing Rock Lakota tribal nation by drilling the frack oil pipeline under the Missouri River. It was an act of aggression against our elders, our women and families, and 300 other sovereign indigenous nations defending the sacredness of Mother Earth. With us there were some representatives of the Taino peoples of Cuba. There was representatives, and proud because they carry the bloodlines of Cuba. Some of them have relatives in New York City. I remember they came to offer their support. So working on these issues to us is spiritual. It reaffirms all of the human relationship and responsibility to protect the sacredness of Mother Earth and Father Sky. It was our spiritual authorities that said, you must speak about this to our relatives here in Cuba. One of the goals of this work is to secure a healthy and safe environment for all people, all cultures, all future generations, with no disparities in who is more protected. I come here from a council of continuous prayer of reunification, of solidarity, and expression of our indigenous spirituality. It's a huge responsibility, but it's necessary during these times of the culture of the extractive economy, a culture of life without limits, couched in the rhetoric of freedom. It is a culture based upon the accumulation and the enclosure of wealth and power by any means possible, such the embargo perpetuated by the United States on Cuba. The culture is like a big snake that comes to our indigenous territories in many disguises, such as the oil and natural gas pipelines, with the false promises of a better tomorrow. This big snake has many heads and is forever hungry. It wants to eat not only our souls, but the souls throughout the world, devastating our original seeds, our seeds that feed our people, destroying the ecosystems of all life that is part of our food security and food sovereignty. It is a big snake that wants to keep not only us in poverty, but wants to keep you in poverty. So our message from our elders is that this is a culture of control. It is a culture of this Trump, this orange man, and his white supremacy, and his hetero patriarchy that he pushes. The acquisition of resources, including labor, are through extraction. The link of some of the mechanisms of governance is militarization, which is structurally well organized, systemic violence that is often brutal. Militarization is a defining feature of governance in the extractive economy. So we want to say to our brothers here, as people of the earth, the common people, that we understand the resistance against the dispossession of our lands, your lands, and freedom of choice on how to live well. So indigenous people from the Western Hemisphere, all the way to the top of the world, from Alaska to the tar sands in Canada, to Standing Rock, and to our brothers in Ecuador, the Siriaku, the Shuar, the Sapura, and to our brothers in Peru. We know what this means when we stand up against this, stand up against violence. With it comes criminalization of our protectors. With it comes assassination of our women as well. An extractive economy demands imperialism. Imperialism can be understood as the ever-expanding concentration and control of seed, soil, in our story, your story, of our land, water, labor, and our life ways. The endless growth economy requires armies and an empire to ensure its continuity. So this big snake wants to live. It's been called capitalism. But this big monster can also manifest itself in any economic system that's based upon an extractive economy.
1 minute.
So capitalism requires decolonization. Colonization cannot be reformed. It must be ended. So with this message of our elders from my homeland, we were there in Cochabamba in 2012 at the invitation of a friend, Evo Morales. You mentioned him. We stood together and said the root cause of climate change is capitalism. So this forefront of a power structure that includes the United States is very important. My last comment is that we have to look at long-term solutions. We got to look and develop strategy to move from an extractive economy to a living regenerative economy. And this is part of the revolution. We must stand together in the rights and defend the rights of indigenous peoples. That's part of the revolution and evolution of life itself. The people who have that first knowledge. The movements working together are needed between the social movements and the indigenous movements to fight neoliberalism and corporate capitalism. So we are here to help support this attack by the United States, attack of the twin evils of U.S. imperialism and attacks of our people as indigenous peoples. The blockade imposed on Cuba must be lifted immediately. Worldwide imperialism must end. Viva Mother Earth. Viva Cuba. Viva Cuba. Viva indigenous peoples.